This week's Dauphine Libere serves as the traditional warm-up race for the Tour de France, which is now barely 4 weeks away. Many of the big favourites for July's contest will line up here to hone their form. They will pass through the same alpine terrain and even tackle the very mountains included in this year's Grand Boucle. Team High Road's George Hincapie and the Starners, Levi Leipheimer, they lead the American charge, which kicks off today with a short prologue. It's the 60th running of the Dauphine Libere, coming to you next on Cyclism Sundays. This is the beautiful old city of Avignon on the side of the River Rhone here in France, the start of the 60th running of the Dauphine Libere race, a stepping stone of course to the Tour de France. It was here once the centre of Christianity. There were 7 popes actually served their reign from this very city. Hi everybody and welcome to Cyclism Sundays presented by Hampton Hotels. I'm Phil Liggett and of course alongside me is Paul Sherwin. Yes, the Dauphine Libere. Paul, it's exam time now for the big riders who have visions of doing well in the Tour de France.
Well, it certainly is, and they've always used this over the many years of the Dauphine Libere as a practice before going into the Tour de France. And when you look down the list of winners, you've got names like Lance Armstrong, Miguel Indurain, Eddy Merckx, and of course Bernard. You know, that's why this race is so important. It's the first real incursion as well, Phil, for many of these riders into the Alps.
Yes, 18 Pro Tour teams, no wild cards. For that reason, last year's winner, Christophe Moreau, is not here. But the big names are here. And let's start with perhaps the biggest. The only man to break into the top 6 who has returned this year from last year is Cadel Evans with an injured knee. But he's back now and they say he's on form.
Yes, I have to say one important thing now, I think, is you've got to look at the Spanish Armada that will be turning up here. Alejandro Valverde dominated early on, Liège-Bastogne-Liège, quiet. Now he's back for the Dauphiné. Also, Carlos Sastre, the quiet man from Spain, too, looking to see if he can hone his talents for the upcoming Tour de France. Levi Leipheimer will ride here, Phil, I think, as a leader of his team, Team Astana, having been a domestique in the Giro d'Italia a little while earlier. And of course, we're going to see how Michael Rogers is getting back from that very nasty little heart murmur. And of course, let's not forget, not last but least, Robert Gesink, a man who we've seen ride very well early on this year in the Tour of California.
And this isn't a race for the sprinters. There's only a couple of flat stages, in fact, but the sprinters are here, but not in big numbers. Watch out for André Greipel, a stage winner in the recent Giro d'Italia. But the real sprinters, they'll probably find themselves riding in the upcoming Tour of Switzerland. George Hincapie also packs a punch, and of course there is Thor Hushovd. But to the prologue time trial, Paul, it's a very flat race. The organisers here are telling us that they expect the fastest ever in the history of the sport.
It could very well be a serious drag strip race because you can probably see behind us the wind is rippling through the trees, and it is basically a tailwind time trial, completely flat, although I suppose I should say slightly downhill towards the finish line. 5.6 kilometres, it's going to be extremely rapid. And you know, there's a lot of big specialists here.
There are big specialists here, but I think we could pick out 3 names who should be at the top of the pile by the end of the day. There are 143 riders in the race, by the way. Paul, give us 3 names.
Well, I'll give you 3, and I think everybody's going to see how George Hincapie is going to ride. You know, I think Hincapie has had excellent form this year, but he doesn't have the results to prove it. But he likes the Dauphiné, and he's won on the first stage here before. Levi Leipheimer, I think, will have the legs coming back from the Tour of Italy because he is a man, I think, who's got something to prove here at the Dauphiné Libere. You know, Team Astana are not riding the Tour de France, so he's up against all of the Tour de France contenders. And of course, the big specialist who's already won a couple of prologues this year, big Thor Hushovd. He's a sprinter, but if you remember a little while back, he beat a certain George Hincapie in the opening prologue of the Tour de France.
Before we join the pictures, this is the situation at the moment. A tremendous time by Manuel Quinziato from Liquigas, 6:23.98. In second place is the time trial champion of Australia, Adam Hansen, and in third is Mikel Astalosa. Let's go to the action. Well, there in the start house now is Nicky Sorensen, so he is number 74 to go of the field of 143, and still the best time to beat, Paul, Manuel Quinziato.
Well, Quinziato, don't forget, I think is a very good prospect of a high performance here. He was a formerly European time trial champion. That's at the under-23 level of the sport. And, you know, over the last couple of years, he's been a rider I've been watching improve, but it is the weather conditions that really have affected, I think, that very fast speed.
Well, we'll just watch out now because this looks as though we've got Kuzinski coming in now, Alexander Kuzinski from Liquigas. Now, you're of the opinion, Paul, the wind is actually beginning to die down a little bit, aren't you?
I'm absolutely certain this morning the wind was a lot stronger. It does seem to have died down here in the finishing straight. I'm just looking at the flags right now. They don't seem to be rippling quite as much as they were in the early part of the afternoon. Now, that is going to affect the guys that start at the latter part of the race.
All right, Kuzinski then, and behind Kuzinski, by the way, we've got Andre Grapel. He's the Team High Road boy that did so well in the Giro d'Italia. Now, they've already said this week that they haven't got a rider here for Michael. They haven't got a rider for the overall. Michael Rogers still a little bit suspect. But Grapel, a man for Team High Road, and a nice crowd too on the start as he goes out onto the course here now.
Well, Greipel, I tell you, at the start of the year was a phenomenal performer in the Tour Down Under, but coming up to the finish line, this is a very interesting move here by Kuzinski.
Kuzinski riding on course, and chance to look at the course a little bit here. It is very, very pancake flat. The wind right behind the riders, what wind there is, but I think it's still pretty strong out there. And just off to their right shoulder will be the Rhone itself. Remember that this is the part of the area where you've got the riders coming through, they call it the Mistral, right behind them. Greipel now also riding pretty well as he makes his start. So he's in the start gate. Remember, this is the man that was to lead out Mark Cavendish in the Giro d'Italia stage, and then Mark realised he could win for himself and sportingly sat up and held off Bernati.
Well, that was a really nice move, and I think that's the spirit of Team High Road. You know, they've had an unbelievable number of victories this year. I reckon they're not far away, Phil, from getting themselves 60 wins.
Alexander Kuzinski then, the Liquigas rider. Remember, it's his teammate in at the finish, Quinziato, who has the best position at the moment, which is great for him, I must say. As we take our first break here in Avignon, the prologue is underway, but as always with the prologue, the big names will start at the end. We'll take a break, see you in a moment. Welcome back to sunny Provence, and we're with the Dauphine Libere today, but before we go back to the action, let's talk about George Hincapie, a man who's now honing his form after his break from the Spring Classics, because in July it's a big moment for George in the Tour de France. Here he is.
Last time our viewers saw you was a top 10 finish at Paris-Roubaix. What should we expect from you this week?
Hoping I can start over with a good prologue, and then afterwards we'll see. It's a tough course. I've been training well. I'm not sure how the condition is, but I feel good, so hopefully I can be amongst the leaders there.
You must be happy with your team's prowess so far this season. They've been marking victories left, right, and center so far.
Team High Road's been awesome. I mean, this year has been incredible so far. Won more races than any team in the peloton, so we couldn't ask for a better season.
And tell us a little bit about Michael Rogers, please. He's on the comeback trail.
Yeah, Michael's looking really good. He was riding well in Catalonia last weekend, and I think he can be one of our guys for the GC here.
Okay, George, thanks. Have a great ride.
Thank you.
Paul, it'll be a strange summer for George in the Tour, won't it? Because he's always ridden along either Lance Armstrong or a team partially owned by Lance Armstrong.
You're right, Phil. There's a big change, I think, for George Hincapie, but I think the important thing is that he's a lot happier than he has been for recent years, and he feels a lot freer on Team High Road.
Well, this is Mirko Lorenzetto from Lamprey in the start house. How he goes out 78 of the 143, Paul, and still nobody upsetting the leaderboard.
No, I think what's going to upset the leaderboard is probably the weather conditions here this afternoon, because I think they're changing every 10 or 15 minutes. The wind is coming in raffles, then all of a sudden it seems to disappear.
I think the weather's the biggest story as the surprising results in international cycling this year, because all over Europe it is not quite the weather we thought. Liquigas rider Kuzinski now heading up towards the finish, and Alexander Kuzinski, don't forget, he's a rider. This is Peter Velits. He's coming up to the finish at the moment. Well, he started behind Christoph Brand, who's in, and Velits here, former under-23 time trial champion. And it looks like 15th place for him on the line. So a little bit disappointing, but he's still finding his feet at this level of cycling. He rides now for Team Milram. Let's see if we can get back down to the start line here. A lot long. The rest of Lorenzetto has gone from Lamprey, as the riders now heading out down the Rhine Valley here with the tailwind, the Mistral, as we now see Arnaud Gerard in the Française Région. So he's going at 5:45 local time here. A little bit of cloud beginning to creep in, but by and large the weather okay.
Yes, I think that's the important thing this afternoon. But the important thing about a time trial like this is you've got to get very hot before the start. You've got to get the engine going and the whistling turbo once you come out of the start house.
So Gerard all set to go now as he makes his move down there at 5:45. And now Peter Bellick's the last man we've had in. So we're now seeing Peter Rollick here from Gerolsteiner. Gerolsteiner, well, they only finished 2 riders in the Giro d'Italia. They really were devastated midway through with crashes and sickness. But Peter Rollick's not part of the Italian team. Now looking to do well here. Should go well when we get to the mountains.
Tell you what, this is a very difficult course though, Phil, because Peter Prologue, I have to say, is a man who may well perform well in the individual time trial, but a lot of these riders really thinking about the finish in Grenoble, and it's a long, hard road to get there.
143 riders taken to the start today. Remember, all of them are Pro Tour teams. Nobody outside of the Pro Tour was invited to this race. The Dauphine Libere feels it's very important to be part of the Pro Tour. They're relying heavily on television coverage. As we now go down to the start house once again, Sébastien Minard from Cofidis, the all-red strip here.
Well, it's going to be a difficult ride for this guy. You know, the riders I'm waiting to see come out of the starting gate who may well could rival the top time, you see, are riders like Jaroslav Popovic and George Hincapie.
Well, let's go down to the finishing line, Paul, because this is Nicky Sorensen, the rider we saw earlier take the start, is coming up towards the line. But he's off the leaderboard, he's slipped down on the inside, and it's not going to be a great ride. It's a great ride for Nicky Sorensen, but it's nowhere near the time that we've seen recorded by Manuel Quinziato. So he continues to sit pretty. Remember that Quinziato went out number 39, and Sorensen has finished from position number 74. Back down to have another look here at the rider from Cofidis, Sébastien Minard.
Well, that's Sébastien Minard there in the red shorts. You can see that.
All right, well, as Minard makes his start out onto the highway, we'll take a short break. And remember that still the leader is Quinziato, with a little bit of a surprise for Liquigas. See you in a moment. Welcome back to the roads of Avignon here. Remember, it's the opening prologue time trial today of the Dauphine Libere race. And this is Grisha Neerman here from Rabobank in the start house.
Well, he's a good man, Grisha Neerman, a German rider on a Dutch team. I think Team Rabobank here will be looking to do something very special at the end of this bike race, Phil, but more likely that will fall onto the shoulders of their man, Robert Gessing.
Well, he had a very nasty accident last year, Grisha Neerman, and broke his fibula in a car when he hit a car while he was training, in fact, but he's coming back as we switch down to the finish here, Paul. This is Andre Greipel here, and it looks as though he's pushing here for the best time as Greipel heads up towards the line. He comes over, but it's going to be close as he hits the line here. He's just gone outside of the time. That's amazing. You really did push the time there of Quinziato, but the sprinter has showed us too. He can make a good time trial as well. Here's the replay.
Well, I'll tell you what, Phil, don't forget this man has come out of the Giro d'Italia. I think he's got very strong legs because he rode a good Giro d'Italia, won himself a stage, and here that's showing the 3 weeks spent at the Giro d'Italia has given the sprinter strong time trialing legs.
So Andre Greipel and Team High Road, they really are on a high this year, have won an awful lot of races. As we go back down to the start house here now and find the rider from AG2R is there. And this looks like Stefan Guber.
Well, Guber, I tell you, Phil, is a very old rider, and every year I keep expecting him to retire. He's almost 38 years of age, but he likes these big bike races, races like the Dauphiné. He's always ridden well in, and of course he's a great Tour de France man as well.
But still nobody is threatening the results at all here at the moment. As we look back to the finishing line here now, this looks Libere is making his run up towards the line. This will be the Bouygues Telecom rider, and it's not a good time for him. He's already going to slip outside of the time of the leader, Quinziato, and I think he's finished there in 6:28. That's not a bad time for him again, but it's not approaching that remarkable time of 6:23.98 by Quinziato. We're looking down at the start house now, and this will be David Vingano.
Well, he's a rider who comes out of Team Quickstep, and I think Quickstep are not really sending a very strong team. You know, they've used riders at the Giro d'Italia. For them, I think it'll really be a question of just survival in the Dauphiné Libéré this year. Maybe their man Juan Manuel Garate will be the top man for them.
So he'll make his start, and Quinziato is sat at the finishing line here, just watching life passing by as the riders also spark by. As this is Rémi Poriol of Crédit Agricole. Remember, all of the riders today, including the last 20 riders, all going at 1 minute intervals. As we go down to the finish here, this is Mirko Lorenzetto of Lampre. But again, it's a long way up this finishing straight. They appear to be on a good ride, but as they come up towards the line, it passes away. And so Quinziato still there with Greipel in second place in the overall situation. Not a great ride there from Lorenzetto.
No, but I think, Phil, some of the big names are really going to have to do something special towards the end, because Quinziato went early on in the afternoon when the wind was extremely high, and for him, I think he took advantage of the weather conditions.
Well, as we see Remy Porial here, he's made his start here. So as he makes his start, it's looking good. Remember that Astana are in this race as well today, coming straight off a victory in the Giro d'Italia. The man behind them is indeed Johan Bruneel. We'll tell you more about him when we come back after the break. Welcome back to France. Before we go back to the Dauphine Libere, one man who's feeling pretty proud of his achievements already this year for Team Astana is Johan Bruneel, the Belgian director sportif of the squad. And let's not forget, he trained Lance Armstrong to 7 victories in the Tour de France. Well, during the month of June, Johan Bruneel has issued his new book, and it's called You May As Well Win. And that's a great title for the man who's trained so many big tour winners. And this week, he will start his tour of the United States. And for that reason, he's now the subject of our Hampton Hotels profile.
When some people were asking me to come and tell my story, that's about 4 or 5 years ago, especially in the United States. At that time, I was really very much immersed into the team with Lance, and I had no time. I wasn't really ready to go and talk about things that are happening at that time. So I thought, you know, it could be a good thing to write about it, and in a few years, when we're all sitting back and relaxing. Stories about cycling, they've been in all the magazines and all the newspapers. And there's so many things that people have never seen, a lot of things that people have never been reading about. And I think this book is really, there's a lot of revealing stories in there, but at the same time, a lot of significant stories. Last year was a bad year for this team. When I took it over, there was a lot of problems on the rider side, on the management side. I definitely think that our team has been caught into the big battle between the ASO and the UCI. I think it's an unfair decision, but we have turned the page now on that, and there's nothing we can do about it. I think ultimately the big loser of this decision will be the Tour de France itself. I think Levi is the biggest victim of the decision. If we look at Alberto, you know, he has plenty of time. He has won the Tour. Levi had his best year ever. Last year, 3rd spot in GC. I know he's been very frustrated about it, but at the same time ready to prove he should be there in July. If I look at my career as a sport director, I won 7 times with Lance, and we had a year which was not so good. Everybody was happy. I was all of a sudden a good guy and a friend of a lot of people. And then in 2007 we come back, we were not the favorites. Nobody thought we would win. And there we are winning again. And then if I think a little bit, if I put myself in the mind of other people, and they look to our team, they look to the champion we have, it could be that we have a number of years, again, the same Tour de France winner. And I know that a lot of people don't want that to happen. If we go back next year and we can do it in circumstances where nobody wants us to win, that's even a bigger motivator.
Bruneel himself was a little bit below a top par excellence bike rider, Paul, but I think because of that he had the ability to recognise how to train real champions. He saw in them what he really didn't have himself, didn't he?
I think sometimes that really is what makes a great trainer, a man who is almost a great champion but understands what you have to do to make the sacrifices just to get to the top.
Well, as we get back into the start house here, this is Arnaud Coyot, Paul, of Case de Pan. Of course, Alejandro Valverde is team leader. He'll be 3rd from the end to go today.
Well, I tell you, Coyot is actually a very good sprinter. He's a Frenchman on the Case d'Epargne team, and he will be looking to maybe explode out of the starting house here to try and put in a good run. 5.6 kilometres. I keep looking out of the window, Phil, because I have a feeling that the weather conditions have changed dramatically, and the flags opposite us here in the commentary position are absolutely still.
Well, the Mistral blows along the valley, and there's no doubt from the flags outside the commentary box which way the wind is blowing. It's blowing at the rear of the riders, bringing them right down from La Pontet to the finishing line here on the banks of the Rhone River. As we now see Daniel Navarro now taking, and this is an Astana rider. And right behind him, going a minute later, will be Jaroslav Popovic.
That's going to be interesting to see how Popovic rides in this. He had a very nasty crash in, of course, the Tour of Catalonia, but Navarro is a rider who's been brought into this squad here by Johan Brunel.
Well, this is the finish here. This is Minar coming to the line. He is also slid underneath the radar here, and it's not a good ride, as challenged the leaders. Kinziato's ride now is beginning to look somewhat exceptional here, because 84 riders have now finished, and that leaves just about 60 riders left to start. And he's still dodging with a great time there, Paul, 6:23.98. Let's go back and have another look here at Navarro. Daniel Navarro, Astana. Astana, remember, they are here because they're a Pro Tour team. They were always going to ride the Dauphiné. They got a late invite into the Giro d'Italia. They proved the worth there, as we now see Popovic. And this could be an interesting ride. He's got to prove that he's ready now to go into the Tour de France alongside Cadel Evans.
I think he's a strong bike rider. Jaroslav Popovic had a very nasty accident in the Tour of Catalonia, went down on a descent, a wet descent at 80 kilometers an hour, but he's looking good.
Well, this is Grisha Neerman coming up the straight now again, and they come into our picture here. He's gone past the time. He's just over 6.5 minutes now, 6:23, so remains the best time. And Grisha Neerman, again a third-time trialist, and again falling away. Let's go back to Jaroslav Popovic.
Well, Popovic, I tell you what, he's the man to do the ride here. He's a tough bike rider, and if you want to try and win the Tour de France, as Cadel Evans does later in the year, you're better off having a man like Jaroslav Popovic alongside you, because he's got guts, he's brave, and even if he crashes out on the course, he'll come back and get into the main field.
There he goes, he's down the ramp and he's out onto the course now. He'll pick up that tailwind straight away here. A little bit of a narrow road to start, but it gets a bit wider. And the road that they've closed down for the time trial, it's usually a dual carriageway here that runs right around the perimeter of the battlements of this walled city. So Popovic then, a big moment for him, I think, over the next week. He's such a faithful teammate. Remember the work he did for Lance Armstrong and for the rest of the team when he rode on that squad. So I think Cadel Evans is going to welcome him. Let's go back down to the finish now. This is Stefan Guber coming up towards the line. And again, he's way over the top already, heading towards 6:40, so he's no chance, over 20 seconds gone.
Well, Guber's much more of a climber, Phil, than an individual time trialist.
All right, Guber's in. The big stars, remember, will go at the tail end. We'll take a break now, but when we come back, we should be just about in time to see George Hincapie. We see you in a moment. Welcome back to the 60th edition of the Dauphine Libere race. Well, one man who's going to enjoy this race, after all, he won it in the year 2006, is Levi Leipheimer. And remember, he's coming off a great Giro d'Italia.
Levi Leipheimer, thanks for speaking to us. Before we get to today, you've just spent an arduous, if exhilarating, month in Italy helping your team and Contador to a victory. Tell us a little bit about that from your point.
Yeah, the Tour of Italy was fantastic for Astana, for Alberto. I mean, he was amazing. He came into the race without, none of us knew beforehand, and without any specific training or preparation for the Giro. And for him to win, one of the biggest races in the world, I think it's amazing. And I'm proud to be part of the team and proud to have been part of that race. And hopefully now I'm stronger from it and can use that for the Dauphiné.
Well, how much gas do you have left in the tank? You're the road captain on this one, but that was a pretty tough month.
Yeah, it was tough, and certainly, if I were preparing this race specifically, I wouldn't choose the Giro, but you do what you can, and I think it's not such a bad thing. I mean, I came into the race pretty fresh and not a lot of racing this year, so I think there's nowhere for me to go but up.
And how about today specifically as a time trial and a short one with your wind to your back? What are your chances in your mind?
Well, I think there's always somebody who's a specialist at the short, flat prologue, but, I expect that I should be hopefully in the top 10.
Thanks. And last question now, barring any unforeseen last-minute invitations, this team obviously has been excluded from the Tour de France. Is it a little bit bittersweet for the team to find themselves on French soil? Do you have something to prove?
Well, I mean, first of all, the Dauphiné is a great race. I love this race, and I've been very proud to have won it before, and we're just, focusing on the races like the Dauphiné and the Giro and California, Romandie, races we've won, and to show the world that we're the best, and that's all we can do.
Paul, Levi Leipheimer went into the Giro, obviously with little form. He comes out with a fine 18th place, but no Tour de France now, sadly.
Well, and that's why I think he's going to show himself some serious form in the Dauphiné Libere this year. And of course, he's going to start, I reckon, with a very good time trial, because with that tailwind, he'll be able to use a monster gear coming off a 3-week Grand Tour.
Well, here's a man who used to be a teammate of George Hincapie, Jaroslav Popovic, and he rides a very good time trial. He looks good here, Paul.
I tell you what, I like the choice of machinery too. He looks as if he's at one with his machine. He really is looking very aerodynamic. And I tell you one thing, just looking at his cadence, he's riding a very fast time trial.
Well, he's trying to remember that he's such a faithful teammate. A good time here, though, a second man in the mountains to silence Lotto. That could be a great result. So let's go back down to the start gate. This looks like the champion here of Denmark, Lars, back in the start house.
Well, looking big and strong. Team CSC have got some very good individual time trialists here. You can see the red and white jersey indicating that he is the national champion of his country.
And you know, CSC seem to strike the victories, Paul, despite the rotten luck this team occasionally gets. And Stuart O'Grady is the one that highlights that.
Well, what amazes me about Stuart O'Grady is he crashed out of the Tour of Italy, and I got a text message from him about 4 days later saying, mate, I'm back on my bike.
And could you send me a copy of the Versus programme? Now, be honest, that's exactly what he said. Well, of course, a winner of Paris-Roubaix, and this is the champion here of the time trial. I'm not so sure whether Lars Bak will do a great time trial here as he goes down the ramp and away. We'll go back and rejoin Jaroslav Popovic. We'll see if Bak can produce it over what is really a sprinter's distance here. That's why a sprinter can often win this sort of a prologue.
Well, it is a very short and violent effort, just 5.6 kilometres. That takes the riders around about 6.5 minutes, 6:23 to be exact for the fastest man so far. But I tell you what, Jaroslav Popovic, I think, has got a very good chance here this afternoon.
Well, as we head back towards the finishing line here, Euskaltel, this is Inaki Isasi coming up here to the finish now. And he's not going to make it either. Well, Quinziato's rubbing his hands with glee at the finishing line right now, because this is the 86th rider of the 143 to finish, and it's not going to pierce the leaderboard. Just having a look at this replay.
Well, I tell you what, he comes up to the line there. We're not really surprised to see the riders from Euskaltel-Euskadi not doing great rides in this kind of event, because these are the men really, Phil, of the big mountain stages.
All right, well, as we go back down to the start house here now, George Hincapie will be just a minute later than the man who just left the start house, Mauro D'Adolto. We'll take a quick break. Rejoin us for George Hincapie. See you in a moment. And we're back to France with the Dauphiné Libere, and one man who hopes to do well in the prologue time trial, let's face it, he's won 2 of them this year, is Thor Hushovd. We call him the God of Thunder.
The Dauphiné Libere has always been a great race for you. How many stages are you going to win this week?
I don't know. First of all, I would like to do a good prologue, and then we see what's going on. If I'm not too far from the yellow jersey, or if I have the yellow jersey, I never know.
We did see you win the prologue at Paris-Nice the last time we spoke. How confident are you for today?
I'm not too sure. I think the prologue in Paris-Nice was fit me better. But I think I'm in great form. I won a prologue in Catalonia 2 weeks ago, so my form is good. Hope I can keep going like this. Let's see.
Now, besides Catalonia, we didn't see you at the Giro d'Italia. So what else have you been doing in the month of May?
I did at the beginning of May, I did 4 days of Dunkirk, and then I did Catalonia. And now I had 2 weeks off and trained well. I was a bit in the Alps for training, and yeah, now I'm here. So I think it's a good program for prepare Tour de France.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tor. Have a great week.
Thank you.
The thing about Thor Hushovd, Paul, not only can he ride a time trial, but he also sprints very quickly. So there's a lot for him this week.
There's an awful lot for him in the first few days of the Dauphiné Libere, but you must never forget, in the past, he was an under-23 world time trial champion. I think his time trialing came before his ability to become one of the top sprinters in the world.
Well, a man who made his name in the Dauphiné last year, underway now, Remy Di Gregorio, being tipped for perhaps a repeat in the King of the Mountains competition, riding for Française de Jeu. And he's gone off now at 3 minutes past 6 in the evening local time here in France. And the cloud beginning to sweep across the skies, but the wind is still fairly strong. But still, as we look at it, there's nobody challenging the best time at the moment, which is still Manuela Quinziato of the Liquigas team. Back down to the start house. Countdown now to Gerolsteiner here. This will be Sebastian Lang here as he makes his start. Still going at 1 minute intervals. That'll be the way right down to the last rider today. Number 143 it will be Cadel Evans, the only rider in the top 6 finishes last year to take the start this time around. The winner last year, by the way, Christophe Moreau. He was unable to start here. He certainly wanted to, but the organisers chose to take only the 18 Pro Tour teams and no wild cards. In a fair ride to be expected by Lars Bak, 6:27 plus 3.54 seconds. The face there of Lars Batik as he comes up towards the line here and hits the line. Still no change in the overall though. 6:23 is the time to beat. It's a very, very quick time, but it's a little bit short of the record of a prologue time trial set by Rick Verbrugge of 58.877 in that magical Giro d'Italia we saw on versus a few years ago. It's Di Gregorio now making his way down to the line. And last time, Di Gregorio, the man from Pontet de Jeu, no result at all from this year, and he had no wins last year in fairness, but he did make his name here, as I say. He won the King of the Mountains in the Dauphiné, and then went on to the Tour de France where he crashed and broke his elbow, and he's been taking a little time here to come back. Koos Spruenhout in the start house now. Little chat with him last night in the hotel, recalling his days when he raced alongside Robbie McEwen. Still thinks that Robbie will refine the form he doesn't seem to have this year yet when it comes down to his sprinting prowess in the Tour de France.
So there's only 2 microphones coming out of this box.
So Koos Spruenhout gets the countdown. Nobody piercing the top 5 riders at the moment. Bert Grabs is 5th, 6:26.62. As we go down to the finishing line now, here is the arrival of George Hincapie. It's been a good time, but I don't think it's going to match this incredible time by Quincy Arto here. Final efforts by George, but he's passed by. He's slotted into second place. It's still going to be a reasonably good time, but surprisingly, only 11th place. We are suspecting that the wind has dropped ever so slightly, but that might be the reason for Hincapie there. Only 11th place for him at the moment. Time is 6:28.31. So George Hincapie, I think, will be a little bit disappointed. Alan Piper was saying he isn't quite on his top form. He's coming back from his organised break after the classics, and now he wants to build up to find that form again for the Tour de France. Down to the back to the line here for Jose Luis Arrieta. Arrieta takes his start as he now begins to go. Waiting now for the next man to go. That'll be Quick Steps, Dimitri Grabowski. Remember, this is a Pro Tour event, but it looks to me as though the Pro Tour itself as a competition is beginning to crumble now. Teams are saying that they're not going to renew their contract on the Pro Tour next year. They don't see the point. This is the arrival of Stef Clement, time trial champion of the Netherlands. And again, another man who really I would have thought would have finished a little bit better off than that. Only 15th place, a time of 6.5 minutes there for Stef Clement. And Stef Clement, as he finishes there, still no change on the leaderboard. Manuel Quinziati on top, followed by Andrew Greipel. We'll take a break. As we pick up the action again then, this is Sebastian Lang who's racing along the ramparts here, this old city in Avignon, down towards the finish. And I wonder if anybody, Paul, can pierce the time here of Quinziati, because this is proving to be exceptional. You might be right, the wind might be dropping, you know.
Well, that's very often what happens. You know, if you go out very early on and there's a change in the climatic conditions, it can have a massive effect on an individual time trial like this, but you never know. The wind may well come back in the latter part of the afternoon. I have to say that I still think the last few men to start, riders like Cadel Evans, Levi Leipheimer and Thor Hushovd, have got a very good chance of doing something special on a very flat and fast course like this.
Alga underway as we swing up here to the former time trial champion of Germany, Sebastian Lang. He's 29 years of age this year and still turning a nifty pedal. There is the switch across what is normally a very busy dual carriageway here, which rings right around this walled city. There's a huge effort to keep all of the cars out of the town, the old town of Avignon, as Di Gregorio coming up towards the line. He's made a big effort here. He remembers a year ago, I guess,
He certainly does, but he has said this year that he's not thinking really, Phil, about the King of the Mountains classification. He's thinking more about trying to ride a good race in the overall standings. He certainly won't be doing it in the Prologue because a 48th place finish is not really what he was expecting, but he is a man who I think will excel when we come up to the big climbs. A little bit further down the road, though, this is Sebastian Lang of Team Gerolsteiner. He's a rider who I reckon could do a good time here.
Well, he finished 5th in the World Time Trial Championship last year, and that was a great result for him because it came out of nowhere. He had 2 wins in the season. That was all for him. Hasn't scored this year, but now let's see as he comes up towards the clock timing system whether he's on a good one. 6:14. He's going to be close to the lead of this. It's still a long way up this straight here. He picks up all of the tailwind coming right off the back of him now. But can he aim at Quinziato's time? No, he can't. That's also slipped away. Well, Manuel Quinziato, Paul, hardly noted for his Prologue victories, is sitting pretty just now.
Well, he certainly is. But let's not forget, Phil, that this is a man who, in fact, came from a track background. He was a very good individual pursuiter and team pursuiter in the early part of his amateur career. And in recent years, he's been a man who's been on the improvement. He's had a very good season so far this year, as we see the finish there of Langer coming in there from Gerolsteiner. We're now starting to get some of the big riders coming in here. This is Nicolas Portal of the Caisse d'Epargne, and he's a rider who he's a French rider who is on the Spanish team, and he's always been a great ally of big men like Valverde in the Tour de France.
Well, there's a nice look around the city here. The Palace of the Popes off to the right as the riders are right over the top. Down below that, the carousel off to our left there, the big wheel. And the old town, believe it or not, doesn't look like it from the helicopter, does it? But it's bustling with people today. A lot of them taking the chance to walk through the underpasses, under the walls, and out onto the banks of the river. Situation at the moment, Quinziato on top with a 6:23. The wind, we think, must be dropping because Adam Hansen there, the champion of Australia, still only in 3rd place.
I have a feeling that in about 30 seconds' time, we may well just miss the start of Chris Horner. Horner now riding from Team Astana. And
Maybe
he's
not.
a rider who I think will ride very well for Team Astana. He was a member, a strong, solid member last year of Team, was in that time Lotto. And he now, I think, will be trying to perform well here in the Dauphine Libere.
So Chris Horner's underway, and we'll take another break here in Avignon. Welcome back just in time. This is Jose Luis Arrieta coming up the home straight here, but he already has slipped away from that time of Manuel Quinziato, which still sits there prettily already. 11 seconds to the good here as Arrieta sprints home for AG2R. Won't be too unhappy though with Quinziato's time. Liquigas has scored well here. That's a good start for them. They did have the lead, AG2R. A little bit of a surprise. Julien Libere early off, the 23-year-old who's never won a race, turned pro just 3 years ago. He held the lead for a long time with 6:26, and even that time is still sitting reasonably pretty on the leaderboard at the moment. So another nice angle on the Pont d'Avignon and the massive Rhone River here. It splits in two here, by the way, the Rhone River, and it puts the land on the right there on an isthmus. Now as we go back down to the start line here with Sonia Duval taking to the start. This will be Joseph Jouffre, and he'll be chasing Sergio Gisalberti, and then Alexander Kolobnev will be next to go. Chris Horner must be around about halfway down the course right now.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see how Horner goes. He looked rather well when he was going out of the starting gate. I'm a little bit surprised about George Hincapie. He looked a lot faster than his 6:28, 5 seconds off the mark. But, you know, George Hincapie has not had a lot of competition, as you said, Phil, since the early one-day classics. And I think he may well be getting himself onto an ascending form for the upcoming Tour de France. And that's what a lot of riders will use the Dauphiné Libéré for, to get themselves into condition for the Tour de France and just to have their first taste of the big mountain passes.
Well, I think that's the way it's got to be right now. George knows himself very, very well indeed. So he's going to know whether he can get the form or not. And a chance here now as we move on again down the rank. This will be Alexander Kolobnev. Looks like he's come prepared for the time trial today with his drawn out position. This is down at the start town, Le Pontet. It's virtually 5.6 very straight kilometres down to the finish. There's a nice view. We're up to the right of our picture as we look to Avignon here. Right up, you see where the Rhine is splitting there, comes back as one. We come down here now. Patrice Algon, former leader of King of the Mountains in the Tour de France. Always has a lot of bad luck, Patrice Algon. 62nd. I don't think he was really too worried about that. Just inside 50 kilometres an hour, about 30 miles an hour, just over.
Yeah, well, Patrice Algon really, Phil, is much more of a climber, a man suited to a long breakaway in a race like the Dauphiné Libere, and a man who will be looking for a breakaway somewhere out on the course. So obviously this violent, explosive individual prologue time trial is not something that he's used to.
Well, the rider's waiting now to pick up the next man on the course here. Next to start will be Valerio Ignoli from Liquigas, and then we'll see the start, hopefully, of Craig Lewis getting his start on Team High Road. One of 4 Americans in the race, in what is a very international race this year. 24 nations represented in the 143 riders. Ruben Perez coming in now. Again, another man slipping away for the Basque team, Euskaltel Euskadi.
Well, this team, not really a team of time trialists. These are the men who we see do battle on the big mountain stages. They are a team of attackers. They are a team of the big high roads of Europe. We've seen them all over the major grand tours, and this team too, I think, will be a team to reckon with here in the Dauphiné Libere. There's a chance to see the starter's clock, as the next man climbing into the starting house here is Valerio Agnoli, another Italian on Team Liquigas. And you can see the crowds out there at the start in Pontet are fairly large, and there is the very centre of Avignon, the home formerly of the popes before they moved down to the Vatican City. And it is absolutely marvellous, this city, just on the side, as you said earlier, Phil, of the River Rhone, which is actually flowing quite fast down here at the moment.
Seems to be giving a shove along by the wind that's blowing here, but looking out of the commentary box window, the flags, although they're still rippling, they're not as strong as they were. And this might be, we've had 1 or 2 surprises over the years, Paul, with time trials getting a good early start. These days, the teams themselves decide where they want the men to go. They look at the weather, they take a gamble, and sometimes you call it right.
Nicolas Portal is coming in now, not a fast time by him, 73rd. He's lost himself 21 seconds and an average speed of 49 kilometres an hour. The race organisers actually choose the last 4 or 5 riders, because normally it's the best placed rider from the previous year who gets to go in the last position. This, though, is Craig Lewis getting his start and rolling down for Team High Road, who have had a brilliant season so far this year.
They've had a superb season. I think it's around about 60 wins now, both men and women on Team High Road. Craig Lewis has gone, though, the South Carolinian, who trains with George Hincapie, and George will have given him a little bit of insight, I think, to how to ride this Dauphiné race, but he's made the team. Remember, that was the rider, and this is Horner, so we'll talk about Craig in a minute, because Horner's coming up. It's been a good ride by Chris Horner here. He's up there, 14th position, but 5, nearly 6 seconds down on the overall ride of Kinziata. So Horner is in, Craig Lewis is off, and we'll take a break. Welcome back to Countdown and departure here in France of Federico. He's had a very good season this year, Paul, so far, probably his best, I think.
Yeah, well, he has been a former national champion of France. That's in the road race discipline as we look down here on Avignon, but he did start the year off very well with a 3rd place overall in the Étoile de Bessèges. He won a stage in the Dunkirk 4-day and in the Tour of Catalonia, so this is one of his best seasons.
Well, we've seen Chris Horner finish. A good ride by Chris Horner, but nobody approaching the leaderboard at all. Mario Ertz coming in now. He was the man that went out behind Chris Horner and has done a slower time than Chris too. Quinziato still there at 6:23. Old man Mario Ertz, one of the oldest riders in the race, I reckon now, but he is a superb competitor, and I'm sure will be in the Tour de France again. He'll be 33 this year.
I think he's a man who will be an ally for Cadel Evans in the high mountains. This is Daniele Riggi from Team Lampre, and he will be looking now at facing up to 5.6 kilometres. Still, that time of Quinziato, Phil, is 6:23, and that is the time to beat. But you know, in the early part of his career, Quinziato was a European time trial champion. That was at the under-23 end of the sport.
Well, as we search the banks of the Rhone for the next man to finish here, it should be Sergio Gisalberti of Milram. We're waiting. The last riders to go, by the way, the hot boys. Hushoft, Sanchez, Valverde, Leipheimer, Cadel Evans will be the last to start here. As we go back up to the rider here, Jérôme Coppel of Française des Jeux. 1 or 2 changes on this team this year. But the French rightly pointing out, Paul, and for whatever the reason being, but they're having a very successful season.
The French starting to come back up to the top end of the sport. This team, by the way, Française des Jeux, losing one of their big stars during the transfers at the moment, because Philippe Gilbert is reportedly moving across to Silence Lotto, the Belgian team, during the transfer season.
Coppel underway. The next man to get into the starting gate will be the German national champion, but not at the time trial at the road race, Fabian Wegmann.
So 1 minute intervals. As we see now, Coppel underway. Next man to finish, if we haven't missed him, should be Gilles Alberti. As up onto the start line here is Fabian Wegmann. Terrific competitor, Fabian Wegmann. He's nearly 28 years of age. In fact, he has his birthday just after this race finishes. It's Jouffre coming into the line at the moment for Sonia Duval. These boys were out bright and early today as a team, riding the course, checking out the wind direction. We saw them about 10 o'clock this morning, some 5 hours before this prologue got underway.
Yeah, well, he's come inside of the top 60, but you can see not a bad average speed for him, 50 kilometers an hour as Fabian Wegmann gets himself ready for a very rapid time. And Wegmann is the kind of rider who could create the surprise over the first few days of a Dauphiné Libere like this, because he's a man who is very aggressive and always looks for the breakaway and always looks for the move. And that face of his coming down the starting ramp, Phil, was one of complete concentration.
Well, it's a very strange race in many ways, and this prologue, with the wind changing like it is, I mean, I can't believe that Quinziato will survive to the end, but his time is not just close to anything that we're seeing at the moment. It's a very, very good time. He may have taken full use of a strong wind blowing for the early starters, and he could well survive this, but we'll see.
Double winner of stages of the Tour de France, David Moncoutier, a very enigmatic rider. He rides either at the back end of the main field or in a breakaway situation, and he's won on France's favourite day to win a pike race, and that, of course, Phil, is Bastille Day.
Well, waiting now for the start and the countdown of Moncoutier. He's had his good moments. He's had his bad moments too, let's be honest. The way he's had a broken leg in an accident. He's recovered from that. No wins this year, but he's got off to a good start. Second overall in the Tour of the Mediterranean, right out in February. Dare I say, the Paul Sherman was once king of the mountains in the Tour of the Mediterranean.
Oh, well, that was a long time ago, but there weren't really great mountains, because the man who was second in that competition was a Noel de Jonker, who looks after the American development squad, the under-23 squad. And Noel, like myself, was also not really a very good climber, more of a sprinter, actually.
Well, we're seeing Moncoutier thread his way away from Le Pontet. We'll be cutting back to the finish for the rider of Alexander Kolobnev, Team CSC. He looked as though he was making full use of the special bikes for the prologue, so he's gone with intent to perhaps do a good ride today. Not surprising, the French camera staying with the French man down there, but Quinziato still the leader. Andre Greipel, who rode so well, and he won that stage in the Giro d'Italia, is the concentration of Juan Antonio Fletcher.
Fletcher, a very popular rider, aggressive rider, one of the rare Spaniards to really love the big one-day races in the northern part of Europe, Paris-Roubaix, and of course in Belgium, the Tour of Flanders. He too is an aggressive bike rider and no stranger to winning races like stages in the Tour de France.
Still waiting for his form, but he's waiting, of course, for the upcoming. He's still ridden well in the Spring Classics. As we see now, the arrival of Craig Lewis here now. He's done a good ride here. This is a big effort. He went training on Otakam last week with George Hincap. He finished only a minute behind him on the Alpine, on the Pyrenean climb, and a second place. Exceptional for a man they're calling a climber on the team. So Craig Lewis in second place, 6 minutes 24.43. So the US and Team High Road have got a new man on the block. He's up in second place. We'll take a break. No change overall. Quinziato in the lead. Welcome back as we see the departure now of Vladimir Efenkim, who's on his way. And everybody's still buzzing in the commentary box here with that superb ride by Craig Lewis, Paul. He slotted in with a 6:24.43 in second place.
Well, we're just going back to Quinziato. This was his arrival just a little bit earlier, and that's how he did it, stopping the clock there in 6 minutes and 23. But look at his average speed there, Phil. He started number 39 on the day. But don't discount this man, because he is a very good time trialist. As I said, in the early part of his career, he was a European time trial champion.
And he medalled last year, third I think it was, in the Italian Time Trial Championships. But whatever way we talk about it, it's still got to be something of a surprise today for Quinziato. This is Juan Manuel Garatti, former champion of Spain, road race champion that is, now about to make his departure down the block.
Could be a man to count on for Team Quickstep in this race. He'll be given a certain amount of a free hand, because none of the major big stars for Team Quickstep are here, so that could fall into the shoulders of this man Garatti. We've seen him ride well in the Tour de France and the Vuelta a España, and here I think he well could be dedicated as the team leader of Quickstep.
Well, as they continue to come. Simon Gerrans here, former champion of Australia, winner of the Sun Tour, which is Australia's other national tour in Melbourne in the state of Victoria. He's won that the last 2 years and feels his form is coming back. At last he says he's starting to feel good again, which is the best time for a man that's a very good stage race rider. Broken into the Tour de France. He's a solid man on the team. He'll be welcomed by Crédit Agricole on the team this year for sure. And now he wants to prove for himself he's ready. A long week ahead for Simon Gerrans and indeed everybody, because we're going on to the big climbs. No Mont Ventoux on the route this year, but you certainly got the Col de Croix de Fer and the Col de Juplin. A finish at La Toussière, made infamous, I'm afraid, by the arrival there of Floyd Landis in 2006, which led to all of the problems of the drugs after that.
Famous at stage 17. Simon Gerrans had a good start to the season with a win in the Criterium International. He's a very experienced rider, but a man who I think Crédit Agricole will be counting on in the big mountain passes. And then when you reel off those names of the mountain passes, Phil, that we will be going over this year in the Dauphiné, it really does sound like a mini Tour de France, as everybody is talking about. This is a good arrival here by Jérôme Coppel of Française des Jeux. He's going to finish himself well inside of the top 10 with this last burst of the line. Well, just to prove me wrong, 16th.
They drop away rather quickly once they get through that gap. The ride by Craig Lewis, exceptional at the moment. And it does seem that whatever Team High Raid do, they can do even better, because the team this year just can't stop winning. And frankly, they're saying they've got nobody here for the overall, but they've got plenty of men to win stages. Well, we'll see as the race goes on. I think they were hoping George Hincapie might have delivered a better blow than he has done. He slipped away, George, in the overall. Is he in 13th position now with his time? Aymar Zubeldia, a man who can ride a good time trial, and he certainly climbs a mountain well. So again, just above average time today might keep him in the hunt for a yellow jersey as the days unfold.
Here's the arrival now of Fabian Wegman. He's really battled around this course and he's put in a fairly fine performance, but as you said, it's an awful long way from the point where the cars get deviated there to the finish line. But he's going to stop the clock there in fourth. That's a second and 48 being lost there, 52 kilometers an hour. And Wegman, I think, looking to maybe try and steal the lead in the first couple of days of this race.
It just goes to show the strength of Craig Lewis's ride, Paul, measured up against Wegman there, because Craig's been down in the Pyrenees with Team High Road training. They climbed Hautacam, which is on the Tour de France itinerary this year, and apparently George Hincapie only managed to finish a minute ahead of Craig on the mountain, so he's got himself a little bit of form.
He's got himself a certain amount of form, but great to ride with a man like George Hincapie, because he can offer to Team High Road such a massive amount of experience. He's the only man to have steered Lance Armstrong around Franceville for all of Armstrong's 7 Tour de France victories. This is Oscar Pereiro, and the winner of the Tour de France in 2006. But still, that discussion goes on, and the discussion with the Court of Arbitration and Floyd Landis still to give a final result. It's supposedly going to happen in the month of June. It's taken 2 years to get a result from that.
It's far too long, I think, for it's not benefiting the sport or indeed the athletes or its image. Well, David Moncoutier coming in there, 44th, slipped away there. Not a noted time trial rider, 13 seconds off the pace. Not a lot of the time, but it makes such a difference in the overall standings. It's back down. This should be Yanis Brekjevic now of Astana, a man who could surprise this week, because Astana seem to be surprising wherever they go right now, especially after their incredible performance in the Giro d'Italia. Victory going there to Alberto Contador as Brekjevic makes his start.
This is Oscar Pereiro, Brekjevic, the name you mentioned there, Phil. If you're looking for a dark horse to win the Dauphiné Libere this year, I would say that is the man that could come up with a surprise. Here is Juan Antonio Fletcher coming into the finish line, and he's put in a sterling performance as well for a man not really regarded as a time trialist, but you see all of these riders taking advantage of the fact that this is a very flat course, aided mainly by a tailwinder. 16th time for Juan Antonio Fletcher, almost 52 kilometers an hour. It's fast, but it's not going to be that record we thought when we saw the win this morning.
Well, the speed is incredible, over 50 kilometers an hour for some of the riders who are not considered to be racers against the watch, and yet they're finishing absolutely nowhere in the overall classification. So Fletcher down there in the list. As we look out across the Pont d'Avignon, the riders finishing to the right of this picture, coming in from the left around the bâtiment, the battlements of the old city here. Well, we can never think of Oscar Pereiro, although the organisers, despite waiting for the news on the final results on Floyd Landis' appeal to arbitration, have said that Pereiro is the winner of the 2006 Tour de France. I have to say, we've never seen him as a winner, and we never will, because he got there on the benefit of one escape when he wasn't a marked rider in that particular year. But there's Effikim in, and I don't believe that time. 6:22.23 has gone inside Quinziato. Now, Effikim is a noted time trial, but it just shows you, Paul, the weather may yet produce a better time.
Well, you've got to look at the names of the last riders to start, Phil. When we talk about Cadel Evans, Levi Leipheimer, Alejandro Valverde, Sammy Sanchez himself, not a bad individual time trialist. Of course, at Tor Hushovd starting 5 from the end, there still is a chance that we will get the winner. Now, this is a man that I thought was going to lead off, but we're looking here at Brett Lancaster, so this is a little bit of a surprise. Unless they're showing me Brett Lancaster starting earlier, because theoretically Brett Lancaster should have started at 27 minutes past 4.
I am wondering, Paul, you're absolutely right. All of our start lists are showing that Brett Lancaster went out number 1, but in fact they've switched him with a teammate, the right of the right of the manager of the team, and that might give us a clue. As we see him go down the road, we'll take a break, rejoin us, and we'll see what Brett does at the finish. Maybe another surprise. See you in a moment. Welcome back as Carlos Sastre goes out of the start house here now and continues. He is chasing, in fact, Brett Lancaster as we go down to the finish. The arrival of Heimar Zubeldia. No change since we saw Vladimir Effikim come in with 6 minutes 22.21. Quinziato now down into second. Craig Lewis into third. There might be some change. No, it's slipping away here, Paul. It's still a little way, but that's another good ride from Heimar Zubeldia.
Well, Heimar Zubeldia is a name that may well come onto the tips of our tongues, Phil, a little bit later on in the Dauphiné Libere, because this is a fine performance in a time trial. There's a little bit of a bump there at about 50 metres to go, which is almost catching out one or two of these riders, and that's just at the deviation point. And I hope nobody comes stuck on that point, because we wouldn't like to see anyone coming down inside of the last 50 minutes. But Carlos Sastre looked very aggressive as he came down. And here's another climber in the start house now, Tricky Beltran, riding now for Team Liquigas.
Former very much appreciated teammate of Lance Armstrong on the Discovery Channel. He's now finding his twilight years on Liquigas, and he's just seen his teammate Quinziato pushed off the top notch. Having said that, Paul, we're still trying to work out why they moved Lancaster, Brett Lancaster of Australia, from the number 1 starter into the back end of the starters here, and so we're interested in his time. This is Pereiro coming up. A good time at this point, but still a long way from the line, so he slipped down a little bit. He's still got to prove himself as a man if he is indeed going to inherit the mantle as winner of the 2006 Tour de France.
29th place there for Oscar Pereiro, losing himself at around about 10 seconds. I think when we go through to the Tour de France, it'll be Valverde, the leader of the team, rather than Oscar Pereiro.
Sure.
But whatever happens, he always will be regarded as a top man in this sport. This is Michael Rogers now. Now, I think Rogers is going to be interesting, Phil, to see whether or not he's going to come back to the form that we always felt was a Tour de France winning form.
Well, he's been sick. He's had a heart complaint, and hopefully now he's getting over that. And he's only just come back in the last 3 weeks of the season, so it's a big moment for Michael. He's got to prove that he's worthy of a place in the Tour de France. As we go back down the road for the arrival of Brekovic, it's still a very good time, but is he too far out here as he races up towards the line? As he shouted on all the way to it, he's going to be very, very close here as Janis Brekovic leaves his mark, but he's off the podium. 9th place as he gets up to the line, 6:26, and that was a big effort from him too.
Well, I think what you're seeing here is a lot of the guys who feel that they can win the Dauphiné Libere are now starting to fire. We're coming to the bottom end of the starting list, Phil, and that's when all the big names are really starting to appear. And that, I think, is a fairly good ride there by Brekovic. But in the starting gate, the man who all of France would love to see be a Tour de France hero once again, Thomas Voeckler, former road race champion of France. And here, I have to say, this year, I think that Voeckler has had one of his most successful seasons. He's been aggressive. He's won some big races like the Grand Prix Plumelec, I should say. And there he's out on course and trying to raise the flag for France.
As we swing back out to see Carlos Sastre here now. Did he finish 3rd in the 2006 Tour de France, or did he finish 4th? Because that will depend on the final decisions on the Floyd Landis affair. But Carlos Sastre, either way, is going to go out amongst the favourites for this year's Tour de France, especially so with no Astana team riding at all.
This is Dario Cioni, a former mountain biker. He's a man who is going to be one of the big allies in the mountains for Cadel Evans, and it's amazing how Silence Lotto, Phil, because of the chance that they've got of winning the Tour de France this year with Cadel Evans, has completely and utterly changed the roster of the team. You know, you're going to have Robbie McEwen as the sprinter all on his own on the flat stages. The rest of the team is built around Evans for July.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. These look like the legs here of Emmanuel Bindi. He should be next to go as we're getting down towards the last 11 riders to start here now. And Bindi of Team Lamprey. Damiano Cunego, by the way, is not here. We expect to see him in the Tour of Switzerland. He's being talked about. He is actually the leader of the Pro Tour. Now, this is the time we're interested in. It's a very good time indeed. Brett Lancaster coming up towards the line now. Now, Paul, they moved him down to this end of the start list instead of going out number one. I think they knew something that perhaps we didn't. Former world record holder at 4,000 metres in the team pursuit, but no, slips into second place behind Efekim.
Just by a 1.1 second. That was a great rider by this man who is an Olympic gold medalist on the track and a world champion as well in the team pursuit. A very fast rider, former winner of the Giro d'Italia opening prologue time trial. And I think if they'd sent him out in first place, he would have had the fastest time because the wind was certainly, Phil, much stronger in the early part of the afternoon.
It's a gamble you take. You may have a point there. Here's the rider who turned professional back in 1999 in September, Sandy Cassar. He's won the 18th stage of the Tour de France last year. Remember the rider that got laid low by a dog? Got back up on his bike in the breakaway and won the stage with a fine piece of tactical riding. Sandy Cassar makes his move as he goes down the course. Nobody yet approaching the time of Vladimir Efekim now at 6:22. Ahead of now Brett Lancaster, who's come in at 1 second behind. All the seconds are rounded up. The tenths of a second only used in the event of riders being equal on the general classification at the end of a week of racing. Well, as Sandy Cassar makes his move, we're getting closer to the big men. Tor Hushoff is yet to go, as is Cadel Evans. We'll take a break. Welcome back, and the arrival of Carlos Sastre here at the moment. It's a good ride. Carlos Sastre comes up. It's going to be just behind Vladimir Efekim, but nonetheless, Paul, I think this is telling us that Sastre has prepared well for the Tour de France. He's in a very good starting position for this race tomorrow.
Well, he's making himself well known as a man who's improved in the individual time trial. We all know that a lot of the Spanish climbers, their weakness has always been in the individual time trial. And there, I think, is a little bit of an indication from Carlos Sastre that he might have concentrated on his time trialing ability for the Tour de France this year. He knows he's got a great chance of winning.
The concentration of Maxime Montfort as he leads out as the Cofidis rider. Sorry, yes, this is Heinrich Hausler. No, it is Maxime Montfort here. He's making the move for Cofidis as he starts on his way. No results for him. In fact, he hasn't won a race for quite a few years, Maxime.
But he was one of the instigators of a very big series attack in the Flèche Wallonne earlier on this year. He's a rider, I think, who he's looking to improve in his professional career. He turned professional back in 2004, and he is, after all, Phil, only 25 years of age. So I have a feeling we could see him improve once we go through to the Tour de France. And the Belgians think that he is a very good climber. This is the arrival of Tricky Beltran.
Well, Maxime might want to celebrate his birthday, which is next Sunday when this race finishes in Grenoble, as we now see Beltran coming in, and nothing to write home about here, though it looks on his face he's made a serious effort to try and step amongst him, but he slipped away. 100th he finishes, Beltran, of the 129 riders who have finished so far. Now we're going down to have a look at Robert Gessing here. He's arrived, and finally so too is his baggage pull, because apparently he went astray, but now he's making his start. And looking for a good result from him, especially in the mountains.
Yes, I was at the airport in Amsterdam yesterday with a number of riders flying down here, and they said he had a serious problem trying to check in, but he did make it in the latter part of the afternoon. Mick Rogers, I tell you what, Phil, looks to me as if he's on his way back. It's not going to be the winning time, but it won't be far off.
Well, I think a lot of people will be delighted to see Michael Rogers. He was so disconsolate when I spoke to him in California at the High Road team launch, because the problems with his body had been found out and he wasn't sure about his future. 23rd place, that'll do for Michael at the moment. Remember, he was the rider who crashed out on what we called Australia's Black Wednesday in the Tour de France last year, because they also went out with Stuart O'Grady. And Rogers at the time was racing to the yellow jersey on the road. So a little bit of more work required, but this could be a good week for Michael Rogers and might confirm his place in the Tour de France. This should be Cyril Desil now. This is a rider who made his name a couple of years ago in the Tour at quite an old age. And he's coming back. He's got good form, Paul.
He's got good form this year. He won himself a stage in the 4 days of Dunkirk and a stage in the Tour of Catalonia where he actually wore the leader's jersey. He wore the leader's jersey in the 2006 Tour de France and in fact finished second on the stage in Depot. But he went on, Phil, to finish in 7th place overall. Not a bad ride here by little Thomas Voeckler either.
He's enjoying his season, that's for sure. The Bouygues Telecom rider. Man that made his name by holding the race lead in the Tour de France for a while before Lance Armstrong got into second gear. And 26th place for Thomas, 6 minutes and 30 seconds, 6.5 minutes, 51.6 kilometers an hour. Still Vladimir Eppenkeem, who is on top, ahead of Brett Lancaster and Manuel Pinziati. They've all done, well, in fact, Eppenkeem's done a 6.22, the other two have done 6.23. Next man to go will be Carlos Barredo of Quick-Step.
Good start to the year for him as well, because this man, he's a really aggressive bike rider. You see he's got that little bit of facial hair down there in the middle. That distinguishes him from the big lead-out man, Matteo Tossato. He won stage 5 of Paris-Nice. He's just about, in fact it was his birthday just the other day on Friday. He's 27 years of age.
Well, as he makes his start now, we're getting down to the 5 heavies here. And the first to go of them will be Thor Hushovd, and these are the hands of the man who has the ability to sprint and to time trial. Has the unique situation of winning the prologue in the Tour de France in Strasbourg and then winning the final stage on the Champs-Élysées.
Just take a look that you can see he hasn't shaved for a couple of days. That's an old wives' tale in the sport of professional cycling. If you want to get every last little bit of energy into your body, don't shave for a couple of days before a big prologue time trial. Sometimes it works, and it may well work for Thor Hushovd, who's hidden himself behind those dark glasses there, Phil, and concentrating for what is going to be and is a very violent effort. He knows what he has to beat.
Absolutely. Is he going to be lucky 3, Paul? He won the prologue in the Tour of Catalonia, just finished. He's also won the prologue in Paris-Nice, which you saw. And now is this going to be number 3 win, do you reckon?
Well, I think he's on form, you know, because he won the prologue of the Tour of Catalonia and then went on to win a stage as well, and he was very aggressive in that race. And look how quickly he's come out of the starting gate. He's up to speed almost immediately as we go back to the finish line here to see the arrival of Sandy Cassar. Not a bad ride by Sandy Cassar. I think it's going to give him a top 20, 25 for him. He's thinking a little bit further down the road. He's thinking about Grenoble in a week's time.
Sandy Cassar carrying the flag for France, 31st position for him today, 6:31. Nobody getting near what is turning out to be a superb ride from Vladimir Eppenkeem. He rides for AG2R. He has a brother also. And now down, this is Sanchez, Samuel Sanchez here with 4 riders left to go. Sanchez now won the 2nd stage of the Tour of the Asturias last month, which was a time trial. He can pack a very good punch in a time trial. I'm not sure he's got the pure speed for a prologue.
He's a very strange rider, you know, because we see him ride well in the overall classification of a lot of races, but he can on occasion put in a very good time trial. This man here, Phil, looks very strong indeed, because this is the God of Thunder. Sitting a little bit high at the front end of his bike. Normally you'd want to be just that little bit lower if you want to get to the high speed of 54, 55 kilometers an hour. But for Thor Hushovd, you just look at those pistons down below there, those big thighs of here. He's knocking over a gear of approximately 55 teeth on the outside train ring, which is probably about 4 teeth more than the normal bike that you'd pick up in a shop, and a 12-tooth sprocket at the back, which is 1 tooth smaller than the bike that you can pick up in a shop.
Well, as we look at the Rhone Valley, it's the valley here that produces the famous wind, the Mistral, at this time of the year. It's been blowing all week. Alejandro Valverde now is ready to start here. He goes 3rd from the end. The start of the journey towards the Tour de France for sure, where he will go out probably 2nd favourite behind Cadel Evans.
Well, Valverde, I think, is a serious tip as a great star, the winner of Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
So as he makes his start, we'll take a break. Rejoin us. Levi Leipheimer, Cadel Evans will be the last to go. Well, as we come back, just look at this now, the arrival of Maxime Montfort here, and this is a big surprise here because he's going to do best time as he hits the line. He's done it too, 6:22.03. Now that is a surprise. As we go down to the start house, the man here on the line is Levi Leipheimer. Boy, Paul, he's having a busy season without the Tour de France now, switching from 18th place in the Giro d'Italia. He will no doubt have just heard that time by Maxime Montfort. That's the new target. Alessandro Valverde is yet to finish, so too is Thor Hushovd.
Well, I'm just looking, you know, there are gusts of wind, Phil, which are coming through every minute or so, which is going to make it very different for all of these riders. This is the arrival now of Robert Hessink, and he's a man who we saw really rise to the fore in the Tour of California in the early part of the season. He's a man who is a climber, big skinny bike rider from Holland. He's not inside of the top 20 here, 13th place for him. 52 kilometres an hour. Phil, that is not bad for a climber.
That is a very, very good time indeed, but they say this man has a terrific future ahead of him. But the gap now between first and second in the prologue is 18 hundredths of a second as we look now at the last man to go here. Cadel Evans, who will understandably go out as the #1 favourite for this year's Tour de France. He wants to prove right now he's in a position to earn that favourite tag. Cadel Evans waiting for the countdown. He's been out of action complaining of a knee injury. I think he told you, Paul, he's feeling okay now.
Well, he was more concerned than anything else because he said to me, I've never had a knee problem in the whole of my career, so I was concerned. I didn't know if I was going to ride and aggravate it. I think he's looked after it properly. I think there was a little bit of an alert with that knee problem. This time trial here will tell us, Phil, whether or not he has recovered from that and is still the #1 favourite for the Tour de France. Alejandro Valverde, I'm sure he will be. Definitely has a chance for winning this bike race overall.
This is Dessel coming in on good form, but not in the time trial as he drops away here, way off the leaderboard. It's the riders behind him which are going to decide this race now. Maxime Montfort delivered a big surprise in 6:22.03. It's got to be a rider only of the quality of Hushoff, Leipheimer, or for my money Evans, who can pierce that. There's the finish of Dessel. Next rider to finish will be Carlos Barredo. I don't think he'll produce quite such a good time for Quick Step. But we don't know about the form of Alejandro Valverde. He's been doing what George Hincapie's been doing, and that's bridging the gap with a little bit of a rest, now building up for the Tour de France.
So take that recipe back to Lance Armstrong. Armstrong used to come out and play when he came to the Liège-Bastogne-Liège and then come out and play here again at the Dauphine Libere. But Carlos Barredo is not doing a bad ride either. He's not the man who's going to surprise the top spot of Maxime Montfort at the moment, but that is a good ride by the Spaniard.
He's a very, very good all-rounder. He's a good lead-out man as well in the sprints. He can climb, and as you just see, a 5th place time there. He can also ride a time trial when it matters. Just about has all the elements required in a top stage racing bike rider. Looks at the clock too, so he was obviously out for a good ride today. Next man in will be Thor Hushoff, who must be the favourite today to win the prologue, but he's going to have to produce an incredible ride now. He's been out on the road for 5 minutes and 52 seconds as he comes into our view.
Well, this is going to be a good time, Phil, because this man has got those pistons pumping away.
Huge.
You know, he's looking at 6 minutes now, and he's got to beat 6:22. I think this man is going to do this. Big Thor Hushoff is the prologue specialist of the 2008 season.
Hushoff heads towards the line. The God of Thunder roars again. 6:11.48. You can probably hear the gasp from the journalists in the commentary box here. 6:11.48. Is that going to be his 3rd prologue victory of the season? Well, he's delivered an incredible time.
I have to say, I think he's made a statement there, Phil, that he wants to be the prologue specialist of this year. You know, he's already won 2 prologues, and that is a massive beating of anybody else. 11 seconds faster than anyone else.
So Thor Hushoff goes top by 11 seconds. Everybody else was nudging by 1 second or less. He now leads by 11 seconds over Montfort and Effenkin. I'm not too sure that anybody left on course to deal with that. A little bit of speed wobble on Levi Leipheimer as he came around that bend. It's one of only 2 bends on the course. The other one's coming up here now. Leipheimer's been out on course. We're waiting, in fact, for the arrival of Samuel Sanchez, who is ahead of Levi. So with no time checks at the moment on Leipheimer.
Well, Leipheimer is getting himself down into that very strange aerodynamic position of his, which makes him go through the air at maximum speed. You see how he puts his head down occasionally? We go to the finish line to see the arrival of Sammy Sanchez. And I wonder if his team manager even thought to tell him that time, because he's gone already outside of 6 minutes and 26 seconds. 15th place for Sammy Sanchez.
Well, I think that was to be anticipated. Nobody's going to live with that time with Thor Hushoff. That was a terrific time, but one man who certainly can is Leipheimer. There he goes in his praying mantis position, tucks right in there. He knew the time of Maxime Montfort as he made his start. Of course, you won't know the time, I don't think, of Thor Hushoff, who's now improved the leaderboard by a massive 11 seconds. There's the kilometre bridge just ahead of him, and he'll make a slightly left bend there. Alejandro Valverde has been out 6 minutes. This is going to be close. This could be second best time. I don't think he can match the time of Hushoff. but he won't be that far away. A huge sprinting effort. Now this is an outstanding ride by Alejandro Valverde. He's a man for the mountains. He'll still get a good finish here. Hits the line, second best time, 6:16.
Well, if you want a man to try and win this bike race overall, Alejandro Valverde has showed here, Phil, that despite not a lot of competition since Liège-Bastogne-Liège, he's now back on form for the Dauphiné Libere. No, he's not going to be the first leader of this bike race, but he's got the form, I think, to go a long way this week.
I think I'd be very, very pleased with that if my name was Valverde. A second to a big prologue specialist like Hushoft. Valverde will go out into this race now with a favoured tag. It all depends what these two can do. The last two riders out on this 5.6 kilometre prologue time trial. On the left is Levi Leipheimer heading towards the finish. He is on a very, very good time, Paul.
Don't forget, he's got the power of 3 weeks in the Giro d'Italia in those legs of his. It's going to be very
Very
iffy,
close.
though, whether he'll get to 6:11. He just takes that speed bump there. Look at his face. He knows what he's got to do.
It's going to be best time for Levi Leipheimer. That is what the Giro d'Italia does for you. Leipheimer gets 6:10.07. He has gone over to Hushoff, and that surely can't be matched by Cadel Evans.
54.5 kilometres an hour for Levi Leipheimer. I think that face tells it all, Phil, but it is the strength of a 3-week Grand Tour in his legs as we go back now to the last man to start, number 1. Second overall in the Dauphiné Libere last year. Cadel Evans now is well within his sights of getting to the finish line, but he is on the ascending curve now. He's looking towards the month of July, and he knows what he has to do is try and beat Levi Leipheimer's astonishing 6:10.05.
Levi Leipheimer has not won a race since February when he won the Tour of California and the time trial. On that occasion, he improved every day in the Giro d'Italia, coming unprepared for a race that was literally thrown at him in the month of May and June, and he finished 18th overall. He's nurtured, he's had time, just time to rest. Now, what about Cadel Evans? Cadel Evans also had time out because of this worrying knee injury. He hasn't wrecked the Tour de France like he wanted to, but he's not going to be near this ball. Already forget it. Cadel Evans is out of the hunt in this particular day. Levi Leipheimer continues to send messages to the Tour de France that Team Astana should never have been omitted.
Well, they shouldn't have been, I have to say. They've done everything to perfection this year. They've had a great Alberto Contador season. Let's not forget this man has just won the Giro d'Italia. Levi Leipheimer now is going to walk away with the yellow jersey on the first day of the Dauphiné Libere. Cadel Evans, don't worry about a bad performance here. Yesterday, Philly rode the time trial stage of the Tour de France as practice, drove 450 kilometres to get down here. Television interviews last night. I don't think he'll be too upset with the ride like that because he's thinking about his performance at the end of a week.
There's plenty of time. There's a week ahead. The prologue is exactly just that. It is the hors d'oeuvre to a tough week of racing. Cadel Evans knows it. He'll be happy enough, I think, but Levi Leipheimer, frankly, should be ecstatic. He's shown us he's got the form, and as we watch Cadel Evans finishing here, Paul, the big thing is that Levi Leipheimer knows he can also climb mountains, and let's not forget, he won this race a couple of years ago.
He did, and I'll tell you, in a couple of days' time, there's a very difficult individual time trial over 31 kilometres with 2 climbs in it, and that circuit really suits a man like Levi Leipheimer, who, Phil, has got the form from a 3-week bike race in his legs. When you ride a 3-week bike race like the Giro d'Italia, you've got that little bit of strength extra in your legs that really allows you to pump those legs.
This is the effort of Leipheimer here, and what a terrific effort it really was. He must have known he was on a great ride at the moment as he heads up towards what was a tremendous time of 6 minutes and 10 seconds. Leipheimer, Paul, as smooth as you like. Those shoulders aren't moving, just the legs pumping.
Well, it's a very difficult position that because he's a smaller bike rider, Phil, he's able to get into, and that really makes him just that little bit more aerodynamic. And today it made him more aerodynamic than big Thor Hushoff by about 1.5 seconds, and that, I have to say, is a pretty phenomenal performance. You can see he's looking up the line here. He knows the time to beat. He will see the time of the winner across the finishing line there because there's a clock that all of these riders look at, but he doesn't even get out of the saddle there. He just keeps the pressure going over that little bit of a speed bump, but look at the pain written all over his face. He's trying to again, I think, Phil, make a statement here for Team Astana, as if it's imploring the society that organises the Tour de France to let them in.
Well, this result will make happy reading here, especially to Team Astana. Leipheimer winning the prologue in 6:10.05. Hushoff pushed back by just over a second there. Valverde well placed now to challenge in 3rd place. Maxime Montfort in 4th and Vladimir Efakine in 5th. Further down, Cadel Evans in 6th And Brett Lancaster, they moved him down the start list for good reason, in 7th place. The long-time leader, Quintiato, 8th. But Craig Lewis pulled off a real good ride. He finished in 11th with 6:24.43. And there he is, a Levi Leipheimer, or as the French say, Levi Leipheimer, is on the podium, Paul. And that is going to be a very satisfying ride for him today.
Well, you know, they were dragged in, Team Astana, just at the very last minute with a week to go into the Giro d'Italia. Everybody thought that their man, Alberto Contador, would abandon after a week because he wasn't ready for it at all. Well, he went on to win that bike race with the help of men like this. Levi Leipheimer, Andreas Kloden, they did the job. And today, Levi has done a phenomenal job here.
Well, today, Levi Leipheimer can expect now the support of Astana because of those Contadors. Back on holiday now, it was Leipheimer that helped him win the Giro d'Italia. Astana on top, and this is still a week to run. This is amazing. So a little wave to the crowd there. He looks quite relaxed, doesn't he, Paul? It's his 3rd win of the year.
Well, what you've got to bear in mind is only a week ago, Phil, he was finishing the Giro d'Italia on the streets of Milano, and that, I think, is a phenomenal performance to recover and do a ride like this today. But he will have had some incredible strength in his legs, and I think maybe aided by the rather sporadic gusts of wind that came down here for this course. But I have to say, the earlier men to start today had the advantage of a howling tailwind, which really puts into perspective how good a ride Levi Leipheimer's was this afternoon.
He always gets a prologue win at some time of the year. He's chosen Avignon today. Last year it was the Tour of California, of course, which he went on to win and lead throughout. I wonder if he'll lead this race throughout. Now there's a question. Well, of course, on the prologue day, the overall classification, the riders take out on the road tomorrow. The time gaps are the same. Levi Leipheimer, they're always rounded up or down to the next whole second. Leipheimer takes an advantage out over Tor Hushoff, followed by Valverde, Montfort and Efaki. Cadel Evans, the big Tour de France favourite, will head out onto the roads tomorrow in 6th place. And this time Levi returns to the stage here to receive the first leader's jersey. They call it here the yellow and blue jersey, though the blue isn't too distinct. It's just a line across the frame there, I think, Paul. But now, how does he feel? His form is coming to perfection for the Tour de France. At nearly 35 years of age, he knows this is likely would have been his last chance at striking out and trying to win that race.
I think this is a very unfortunate decision by the organisation of the Tour de France, because Levi Leipheimer, I reckon this year, Phil, probably would have had his last serious crack at winning this bike race. And I think what he'll try and do is take his form from the Giro d'Italia right through the Dauphiné Libere, as if to say to the organiser of the Tour, you've made a very serious mistake by keeping me out 3rd in your race last year and my teammate out, the winner last year, Alberto Contador.
Well, Leipheimer, let's keep it in perspective, has won this race in 2006, and he's in the best position possible now to win it again in 2008. Well, Paul Sherwin has left my side. He's gone down amongst the crowd, and he's now talking to Levi Leipheimer.
Well, Levi, it's a bit of a strange year for you, really, because it started off normally with the Tour of California, but then I don't think you expected to have that training camp in Italy for 3 weeks.
Yeah. You know, I didn't have a lot of racing in the spring. I mean, California I had, and then, you know, it was a big goal of mine, so I took a break afterwards, and I had only Castile, Leon, and Georgia, which, you know, they're hard to win, but really they're not the most difficult races, and so I felt like my form wasn't that great going into the Giro, but it turned out great for us because Alberto showed that he's the best rider in the world. I think we showed that we're the best stage race team in the world, and along the way I got a great training camp in, and now to take the Prologue and the Dauphiné, it's awesome because I love this race, and I couldn't be happier.
Well, I'm pretty sure I can safely say that Levi Leipheimer is very happy with that result, and Astana, my goodness me, this team can't go wrong. The Tour de France really can't say now they've got the best 20 teams in their event, can they? Well, that about wraps up the time trial here from Avignon, but next Sunday, don't forget, we have a double header for you. The Tour de Suisse, which will be on stage 2, while we watch the final stage of the Dauphiné Libere, which will come in from Grenoble. That is all beginning at 5 o'clock Eastern Time, brought to you by Hampton Hotels, of course, only on Versus. And don't forget, you can learn a full schedule of our cycling programs at versus.com. Well done today to Levi Leipheimer. Astana keep sending out those messages, don't they? Until next weekend, for Paul Sherwin, I'm Phil Liggett saying goodbye for now.